Hello, dear listener. Welcome back to The Wandering Neuron, the place where science becomes a story, and stories become soft places to rest your thoughts. Tonight, let's step barefoot into a world where green things breathe, remember, feel, and speak. Yes, we are entering a forest, but not the kind that stands silent and still. This is a world where trees murmur to each other underground, where roots touch and tangle like fingertips, seeking comfort, where the scent of a wounded pine can ripple through an entire woodland, and fungi, ancient, hidden, form a web of whispers beneath the soil. Some scientists have called it the wood wide web. Others call it the language of plants. But you and I, let's call it the forest's dream. Close your eyes if you like. Let the outside world soften. Let the steady rhythm of your breath align with the slow, ancient pulse of the trees. Tonight you'll hear of how forests talk, not with voices, but with chemicals, roots, networks, and light. You'll learn how a mother tree protects her young, how dying trees pass on their last messages, how warnings echo through leaves, and how the oldest organisms on Earth might still remember the Ice Age. But first, breathe in. Can you smell that? The earthy musk of moss and bark, the cool green hush that lives only where trees stand tall. We begin our journey not with words, but with roots. Let's go deeper. Not long ago, we thought of plants as background, scenery, decorations, green wallpaper to the real drama of life. They stood still. They made no sound. They had no eyes, no mouths, no heartbeat. But science, in its slow, careful way, has started to lean in closer. And what it hears is astonishing. Plants, it turns out, are far more alive than we imagined. Not just biologically, but behaviorally. They are sensitive, reactive, sometimes even strategic. Let's begin with light. A seedling, buried in darkness, knows the direction of the sun. Its pale green shoot will twist and lean, even underground, toward the first trace of warmth. It remembers where the light was yesterday and aims for where it will rise tomorrow. In laboratories, scientists gave young pea plants two options: a light that appeared at random and one that followed a pattern. The peas learned the pattern, adjusting their growth like animals learning a maze. And when a Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant, is touched, it folds its leaves inward, gently, quickly, like a whisper closing. At first, scientists thought this was just a reflex, but the plant learns. When touched repeatedly, without harm, it stops folding. It remembers. Even weeks later, it still remembers. That's not just a reaction. That's behavior. That's memory. And so we must ask, if plants can sense and remember, if they respond to pain and nurture their kin, if they communicate warnings and adapt to threats, are they in some way aware? Not in the way we are. They do not dream, they do not fear, but they perceive. Light is their vision. Touch is their sense of boundary. Chemical signals are their language. And time. Time moves like water to them. Slow, deep, rippling backward and forward through their bodies. Trees, for instance, measure day length. They mark the seasons with molecular clocks. Some even remember drought, reacting more efficiently to water loss if they've suffered before. In a way, they have memory without neurons. They respond not with thoughts, but with cascading patterns of chemistry, with shifts in hormones and whispers in their xylem and phloem. Still, something remarkable stirs inside them. And this stirs inside us, too, doesn't it? This wonder that what seems still may move, that what seems silent may speak, that what we thought of as scenery might be listening. So then, if plants sense, remember, and respond, could they also communicate? And if so, how? That's the forest's secret. A whisper not carried by wind or voice, but through air and roots and fungi and scent. Let's follow those roots now into the next layer of the forest's invisible life. Beneath your feet, woven like the veins of the earth, is a secret network older than writing, older than wheels singing in the sea.
It is made not of wires, but of threads, tiny branching filaments of fungal life. They are called mycorrhizae, a word from the Greek for fungus and root, and through them the forest speaks. These microscopic filaments stretch from the roots of trees, threading through the soil like lace. They reach out, seeking other roots, other trees, other fungi, and together they weave the forest into a single living system. Some scientists call it the wood wide web, but unlike the internet of glass and code, this web is alive. It pulses with sugar, nitrogen, carbon, calcium, and information. Imagine it. A Douglas fir in summer, flooded with sunlight, makes more sugar than it needs. It sends some of that sugar downward into its roots and into the fungal filaments wrapped around them. The fungi, in turn, send nutrients and minerals from the soil, phosphorus, potassium, up into the tree. But it doesn't stop there. The fungi extend beyond one tree's reach. They connect to another, and another, and another still. An entire forest, linked invisibly underground. What happens next is astonishing. Let's say one tree is struggling. Perhaps it's shaded by taller trees, or damaged by drought. Through the fungal network, neighboring trees can share their sugars, sending help to the weaker tree, as if sensing its hunger. Mother trees, those tall ancient giants that have stood for centuries, are often found at the center of these webs. Their roots reach wide, nurturing saplings not just with shade and shelter, but with carbon. They feed their young. In lab experiments, scientists used radioactive carbon to trace this flow. What they saw was stunning. Carbon moved not randomly, but purposefully, from mature trees to young, vulnerable ones. This is not a forest of isolated individuals. This is a family. And when danger comes, the network becomes an alarm system. If a tree is attacked by insects, say, it releases chemical signals into the air. But below ground, something deeper happens. The wounded tree sends distress signals through the fungal network. Within hours, neighboring trees ramp up their defenses, even before the attackers reach them. It's as if the trees warn each other. They are coming. No voices, no eyes, but a forest that feels danger, shares resources, and remembers loss. This ancient alliance between tree and fungus is not one-sided. Fungi can't make their own food. They rely on trees for sugars. And in return, they give the trees access to vast underground markets. They dig through the soil, breaking down organic matter and extracting minerals and nutrients.
A tree's own roots may only explore a tiny patch of soil, but the fungal network reaches meters, even kilometers. It's as if every tree has extended its senses far beyond its bark. Some scientists believe that more than 90% of land plants form symbiotic relationships with fungi. They are not optional. They are fundamental. And yet, we never see them. They work in the dark, unfolding silently beneath our every step, like breath beneath the skin of the earth. And just as a human brain relies on its neural network, the forest relies on its fungal web. It is not a metaphor. It is biology, but it feels like poetry, doesn't it? Imagine the quiet conversations happening below us. The ancient trees speaking in sugar. The fungi listening in minerals. The saplings learning the shape of survival through the whispers of their elders. The forest is not a collection of trees. It is a community, and its voice is carried on filaments finer than a spider's web. So the next time you walk in the woods, pause. Feel the ground. It's not just dirt. It's memory, connection, and message. Underneath you, the trees are talking. The forest speaks in silence, and some of its most urgent words are carried not by roots or fungi, but by air. Breathe in. Can you sense it? The crisp, peppery note of pine? The citrus burst from crushed leaves? That's not just aroma, that's language. Trees, like animals, experience wounds. But when a leaf is chewed or a branch is broken, it doesn't only mean damage, it can also mean alarm. In that moment of attack, say by a caterpillar, the tree doesn't cry out, but it releases scent. A cloud of invisible molecules rises into the air, a blend of volatile organic compounds, complex, unique, and urgent. This is not perfume. This is a signal. Other trees nearby, downwind, sometimes even upwind, detect these molecules through pores in their leaves. And within minutes, they begin preparing their defenses. Some trees start pumping tannins into their leaves, making them bitter, tough, less palatable to herbivores. Others increase production of chemical compounds that repel insects, or even summon predators of their attackers. Yes, you heard that right. Some plants call for help. Take the wild tobacco plant. When chewed by caterpillars, it emits a blend of chemicals into the air. These molecules attract parasitic wasps, natural enemies of the caterpillars. The wasps arrive, lay eggs in the attackers, and the plant is saved. A silent SOS. And this happens not just between members of the same species, but sometimes across species boundaries. A maple tree can warn an oak. A sagebrush can alert a tomato. Even seedlings in pots, when placed near clipped or wounded neighbors, alter their own chemistry as if bracing for attack. Scientists call this phenomenon plant-plant communication. But it's not communication in the way we speak. There's no intention, no will, only chemical exchange shaped by evolution, an ancient language older than words. It's slow, yes, but it's real, and remarkably effective. In one famous experiment, researchers clipped the leaves of willow trees, mimicking insect bites. The damaged willows began releasing distress molecules. Nearby willows, untouched, began producing defensive chemicals within 24 hours. They had listened, and they had acted. Other experiments showed that trees isolated in airtight chambers did not react when neighbors were wounded, but those exposed to shared air did. The message was in the scent. These airborne signals, called volatile organic compounds, can travel meters, sometimes tens of meters through the forest. And in dense woodlands, they may act like a local warning system, a way to prime defenses even before the danger arrives. But there's more. Plants don't only react, they remember. Some trees, after being attacked once, respond faster and more forcefully to future threats. Their second response is stronger, as if the wound taught them something. This phenomenon, known as priming, suggests that plants possess a form of memory, not stored in brains, but in biochemical patterns. Imagine walking into a forest where every scent is a story. A leaf torn, warning of a hungry mouth. A blossom bruised, calling for protection. A branch bent, recalling wind, storm, struggle. And the air is thick with unspoken messages, moving leaf to leaf, tree to tree, in a conversation you can't hear, but can breathe. It's as if the whole forest holds its breath together, then exhales, and in that breath tells the tale of what's happening, what's needed, what's coming. Even as we walk beneath the trees, they may already be responding to our presence. Our footsteps compact the soil. Our scent, our heat, even our voices might register as part of their environment. A ripple, a tremor, a presence. And yet they do not run. They do not flee. They simply adapt, quietly, chemically, completely. The next time you stroll through a pine forest and catch that rich, resinous aroma on the breeze, remember, you might not just be smelling a tree, you might be inhaling its thoughts.
In the still heart of an old forest, you might find a tree taller than the rest. Its bark is thicker, its canopy broader. Its roots reach wide, even into neighboring lives. This is a mother tree, a term coined not in myth, but in science, to describe the largest, oldest trees in the forest, which often serve as central hubs in underground fungal networks. Their wisdom is not made of thought, but of memory carried in carbon, of resilience passed down through roots. They have weathered storms, fires, droughts, pest invasions, and survived. And they don't just stand still. They give. Through the wood wide web, mother trees share sugars with seedlings, especially those that are shaded, vulnerable, or struggling to grow. They don't just nourish their own genetic offspring, they help strangers too. Species to species, tree to tree, connection outweighs competition. It's as if the forest believes in community more than conquest. One of the scientists who discovered this, Dr. Suzanne Simard, traced the flow of carbon between trees in a Canadian forest.
She found that large, mature trees were sending carbon through mycorrhizal networks to younger trees, even when their own growth slowed. When a mother tree is injured or dying, it sends out a final message. A flood of carbon, nitrogen, and even defense signals is released into the network. A legacy, a parting gift. It's not just support, it's preparation. And remarkably, when a mother tree is removed, cut down, logged, or lost, the surrounding forest suffers. Seedlings die, networks fragment. The wisdom of that space vanishes. Without its elders, the forest forgets how to recover. In this way, mother trees are like neurons in a vast ecological brain, connecting, nourishing, remembering. They are not passive. They are pillars. And when they fall, the echoes reach far beyond the sound of their crash. Memory is often thought of as a human trait, a flicker of thought, a story stored in synapses. But the forest remembers too. Its memory is not held in neurons, but in molecules, in rings of wood, in the chemistry of its sap. Consider drought. A young tree facing its first dry season struggles to conserve water. It closes its stomata, the tiny pores on its leaves, slowing photosynthesis to survive. But a tree that has faced drought before responds faster, more efficiently. Its biochemical pathways have changed. It is primed. This isn't guesswork. It's memory. And it stretches further. Some trees show altered responses to droughts that happened years ago. Their leaves grow smaller. Their stomata open more cautiously. Their xylem, the vessels that carry water, becomes more resistant to air bubbles. Tiny embolisms that could starve the tree of life.
This is trauma turned into wisdom. Even fire becomes part of the forest's long memory. Certain pines, like the lodgepole pine, only release their seeds in high heat, a strategy evolved with wildfire. Their cones are sealed with resin, which melts in flames, releasing new life into burned soil. The forest doesn't just survive fire, it plans for it. And in tree rings, scientists can read the history of trauma. Narrow rings for lean years, wide rings for growth, scars for fire, shifts in carbon for drought. Each tree becomes an archive, a living record of storms, floods, insects, frost, and sun. And when old trees connect to young ones through mycorrhizal threads, they may also pass along their chemical memories, not just nutrients, but strategies. As if whispering, "I have seen the dry times, prepare. I have known the fire, be strong. I have bent in wind, bend, do not break." The forest does not forget. It grows wiser with every wound. Can a forest grieve? Not in the human sense, with tears, rituals, or longing thoughts, but perhaps with silence, with biochemical emptiness, with an absence that echoes through its networks. When a tree dies, it does not simply fall, it changes the chemistry of its surroundings. The mycorrhizal threads that once carried its sugars go still. Its signals, those constant whispers of water need, carbon exchange, chemical alerts, fall silent. Neighboring trees often respond. Studies show that trees connected to a dying neighbor sometimes alter their own behavior. They shift carbon distribution, they slow growth, they withdraw. In controlled experiments, when trees were killed, their roots severed, their networks cut. Other trees connected to them via fungal webs showed decreased photosynthetic activity, a kind of biochemical mourning. The fungal networks themselves begin to decay without their host. And then there is the final gift. A dying tree often sends out its remaining carbon and nutrients through the network, as if offering itself to the forest one last time.
Death here is not waste. It is transformation. The fallen log becomes home to fungi, insects, moss. Its minerals return to the soil. Its shade shelters new shoots. And deep in the soil, its legacy may linger in DNA, in scent, in the shape of the forest's collective memory. Even without thoughts, without minds, there is a kind of reverence here. Not sadness, perhaps, but recognition. A life that was, a space that held meaning. The forest may not grieve like we do, but it remembers its dead.
And in remembering, it renews. Light is the breath of trees, the quiet fuel of forests. The sun above may blaze, but down below, under layers of green, sunlight becomes rare currency. It filters through leaves in shards and flecks, like golden dust swirling in a cathedral. In these quiet beams, trees learn to negotiate. At first glance, the forest canopy seems competitive, each tree reaching upward, stretching branches to steal light from its neighbors. But look closer. The forest, in its patient choreography, has created a symmetry of survival. In old-growth forests, trees organize themselves so that their crowns do not overlap too much. They leave canopy gaps, subtle spacing that allows light to trickle down to saplings and shrubs below. This pattern isn't accidental. It's shaped by decades, centuries of silent conversation. Some species, like beeches and firs, adapt their leaf angles to capture more diffuse light. Others, like maples, adjust the timing of leaf growth to take advantage of early spring sun before the canopy closes above them. In the shaded understory, young saplings learn to grow slowly, patiently storing energy until an old tree falls, opening up a sudden flood of light, a silent green explosion of opportunity. And what of those that live in the sun? Canopy giants regulate not just their own photosynthesis, but sometimes send sugar to shaded relatives below, a gift of sunlight they have caught and chosen to share. Imagine a forest as a giant solar array, self-organizing, adaptive, fluid. A leaf here tilts a little more. A branch there refrains from growing wider. The forest is not greedy. It is wise. And when drought comes, sunlight becomes danger. Excess light during water scarcity can burn delicate leaves. In response, some trees create photoprotective compounds, tiny sunscreen molecules that guard their green cells from destruction. Others alter leaf orientation, folding slightly or turning edge-on to the sun, cooling themselves, shielding the forest floor. This is not passive. This is planning, a slow, seasonal, biochemical conversation with the sky. And what about nighttime? Even then, trees remain aware. Their internal clocks, circadian rhythms, help anticipate dawn, regulate water use, and prepare for photosynthesis before the first rays of light. A tree does not simply exist in light. It reads it, measures it, saves it, and sometimes gives it away. The forest canopy is not a battlefield. It is a symphony, each tree playing its part in harmony with the rest. Do trees have ears? No, but they do listen. Not to music, not to our words, but to vibrations, the gentle trembling of the world around them.
All living things produce sound, even if it's too faint for us to hear. Roots growing through soil emit tiny crackling noises. Leaves rustle not just in wind, but in response to motion, touch, even light. Plants detect these vibrations and they respond. In experiments, scientists played recordings of caterpillars chewing near untouched plants. Though no real damage occurred, the plants began to increase their defensive chemicals, preparing for attack. They heard the threat before it arrived. Other studies showed that plants exposed to the sound of flowing water grew roots in that direction, as if listening for hydration. Still others reacted to musical tones or human speech, showing shifts in hormone activity and growth direction. It's not hearing exactly, but a sensitivity to wave and rhythm, to frequency and force. And beneath the ground, roots respond to mechanical vibrations in the soil. They can sense obstacles before touching them. They slow growth when they approach hard rock and shift direction towards softer pathways. This is not sound as we know it. It's perception through motion. Think of it as the heartbeat of the earth, transmitted through soil and trunk and leaf, and heard not by ears, but by living tissue, designed to feel the tremble of existence. And while science is only just beginning to study these acoustic interactions, the implications are stunning. Could plants communicate not only through air and root, but also by sound? Could the forest have a low hum of internal awareness, a web of silent sonar where life listens to life? Perhaps one day we will walk through the woods with instruments that translate vibration into song, and finally hear the secret whispers that trees have always known. For generations, we believed that nature was red in tooth and claw, that every living thing fought for dominance, to survive at the expense of others. But the forest tells a different story. Yes, competition exists. Light is limited, water can be scarce, nutrients are not infinite. But more often than not, trees don't just fight, they collaborate. In species-rich forests, trees of different kinds often grow side by side, not just tolerating one another, but sometimes helping each other thrive. Some send carbon across fungal networks to neighbors not even of their own species. Others engage in facilitation, one tree altering the environment in a way that makes survival easier for another. A birch, for example, may leaf out early, providing shade to a delicate fir sapling. Later in the season, the fir's deeper roots help stabilize the soil that the birch shares. There is reciprocity here, a balance, a quiet give and take. And it's not just between plants. Trees form partnerships with birds, insects, mammals. They offer food in the form of fruit, seeds, nectar, and receive in return pollination, seed dispersal, protection. This vast web of mutualism makes the forest more resilient. When one species falters, others compensate. Diversity becomes a safety net. Community becomes survival. Even dying trees, instead of hoarding resources, release their remaining energy into the network, as if saying, "Take what I have left, grow stronger, carry on." This is not a war zone. It is a village. Not chaos, but coherence. And perhaps it challenges something in us. The old idea that to succeed, we must outcompete. The forest suggests another truth, that to endure, we must cooperate. That strength lies not in isolation, but in connection. That the tallest trees are held up by the smallest fungi, and the softest moss is kept alive by the shadows of giants. Beneath the forest floor lies a hidden realm, not of roots alone, but of something far more mysterious, a vast, invisible web pulsing with life and communication. Scientists call it the mycorrhizal network, but many now know it as the Wood Wide Web. And it is through this ancient fungal lattice that forests whisper secrets, share resources, warn of danger, and perhaps even feel. Let's gently lift the moss and soil, not with a shovel, but with our imaginations, and descend into the subterranean heartbeat of the forest. Mycorrhiza comes from the Greek words myces, which means fungus, and rhiza, which means root. It is a mutualistic relationship between fungi and the roots of most plants. This alliance is not new. It dates back over 400 million years, long before the first forests we know today ever grew. In this partnership, the fungus wraps around or even penetrates the plant roots. In exchange for sugars produced by the plant through photosynthesis, the fungus offers something invaluable, an extended reach into the soil, a fine-tuned network of hyphae that can absorb water, nitrogen, phosphorus, and trace minerals far beyond the reach of any root alone. But this connection goes far beyond just trading nutrients. In a landmark series of studies, forest ecologist Dr. Suzanne Simard discovered something astonishing. Through the mycorrhizal network, large trees, especially old, mature ones she dubbed mother trees, support younger saplings by sending them nutrients, especially in the deep shade where little light reaches. These mother trees can identify their own kin. They preferentially channel carbon to their own seedlings. And when they're injured or dying, they seem to will their resources into surrounding trees, a final act of generosity. This network creates a family structure within forests, where trees nurture, protect, and guide each other not with touch or sound, but through a web of living threads beneath the surface. The fungal mycelium, a delicate gossamer lattice, stretches out in all directions. One single teaspoon of soil can contain miles of fungal filaments. These filaments link not just one tree to another, but entire forests into superorganisms. Through these mycelial connections, trees send nutrients to others in need. They warn each other of pests or disease. They adjust behavior, like slowing or increasing growth, based on shared signals. These signals can travel meters, sometimes even tens of meters underground. And because fungi can connect not only individuals of the same species, but of different species, the network doesn't just create a forest, it binds it. When a tree is attacked by insects or drought-stressed, it can release chemical distress signals, volatile organic compounds above ground, and signaling molecules below ground. The mycorrhizal network transmits these signals, prompting other trees to activate defense genes, produce protective chemicals, or change how they allocate resources. It's as though a tree cries out in pain, and the others listen, brace themselves, and respond. And the fungi? They aren't just passive wires in this system. They benefit too. Healthy forests mean more food, more sugars flowing to them from photosynthesizing leaves above. The fungi have a vested interest in maintaining the health and diversity of their host community. Some scientists believe the fungi even modulate communication, like a nervous system, filtering which signals get through and how strong they are.
It's tempting to ask, does this mean forests are conscious? While science doesn't claim that trees have brains or thoughts, what we're discovering is perhaps even more profound, a distributed intelligence that arises from cooperation, balance, and symbiosis. The forest behaves more like a living mind than we ever imagined, a system that remembers, adapts, and responds to change, not in milliseconds like us, but in the slow and wise rhythm of trees. Perhaps we are not the only ones thinking. Perhaps the forest thinks in root pulses and fungal whispers. As forests are fragmented by deforestation, roads, and development, the fungal networks are disrupted. The ties between trees are severed, and with them, their ability to share and survive together. Without the underground web, seedlings falter,
orphans without a mother tree. Modern forestry often clears the largest trees, the very ones most connected in the network. But research shows that preserving mother trees and their networks may be key to reforestation success. We're only just beginning to understand this living internet, and already we know, when we harm it, we not only weaken individual trees, we fray the social fabric of the forest itself. Brain, let it sink in. The next time you walk in a forest, remember, beneath your feet lies a kingdom more complex than any city, a neural web of wood and fungus, a language of molecules, a communion of trees. They are not alone. They never were. In the next section, we'll explore how this quiet communication becomes action, how forests make decisions, defend themselves as a group, and display a kind of collective wisdom. Let's step into the mind of the forest. High above the forest floor, where sunlight dances like golden lace across trembling leaves, the canopy stretches like a living ceiling, vast, whispering, and wise. Here the elder branches cradle secrets too subtle for hurried eyes. The treetops do not just reach toward the sky for light, they reach across time. They carry memories, they anticipate futures, and in their quiet language, they teach us that even rooted life knows how to remember. Plants, it turns out, are not just passive bystanders to the passage of time, they are their careful witnesses, and in their own ways, they have become keepers of it. Let us begin with memory, not the conscious recollection we associate with our own minds, but a quieter, cellular kind. Plants remember droughts, they remember wounds, they remember seasons of plenty and seasons of threat. Not in words or dreams, but through epigenetic markings, chemical shifts, and the rewiring of internal rhythms. When a tree suffers through a particularly dry summer, it remembers not in words, but in readiness, changing how its roots grow the next year, how early it opens its buds, how much water it dares to use. They are the timekeepers of the canopy, and we, perhaps, are just beginning to learn their clock. Have you ever stood beneath a tree during a gentle rain and listened? Not just to the tapping of drops on leaves or the hush of water on moss, but to the way the forest itself seems to breathe differently. Slower, deeper, softer. In this chapter, we walk through the hidden symphony that arises when water meets root, canopy, and soil, and how forests respond not only to rain, but to the pulse of weather itself. Rain is never just water. To a tree, it is conversation, information carried in droplets. With every rainfall, chemical signals wash down the bark and are absorbed through roots. They bring news from the upper canopy, perhaps about a fungal spore, or a pest, or a nutrient imbalance. Leaves stretch wider as stomata open to drink and breathe. Roots expand and flex, sensing the moisture's reach and sending feedback to the crown. But more than that, forests remember the rain. Trees can recall past droughts through epigenetic changes that alter how their genes express. Some will begin preparing months in advance for a dry season, altering leaf shape, producing more resin, even sharing warnings with saplings nearby. A beech tree that has endured decades of erratic weather will teach the next generation through its roots and fungal networks, ensuring resilience is passed along like heirlooms. Rain also activates microbial life. With the first drops, dormant bacteria and fungi stir from sleep. Spores crack open. Microfauna like springtails and protozoa emerge from the soil's cryptobiotic crust, contributing to nutrient cycling. The whole forest floor comes alive, not in chaos, but in perfect timing, like instruments cued in a score. And above, the leaves respond with sound. Acoustic ecologists have recorded how forests subtly change pitch when wet. the way wet leaves absorb different frequencies, how dripping branches muffle or echo. The entire sonic identity of the forest shifts. Not just noise, but a kind of language. A tone that tells every organism water has arrived. Move, feed, grow, rest. Weather, in its subtleties, becomes a guiding hand. Barometric pressure changes influence when mushrooms sprout, when trees flower, when roots pause. Lightning, far from being destructive, stimulates nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil. Even wind, often viewed as stress, helps trees grow stronger, shaping their architecture, informing neighboring trunks through minute vibrations carried down into the root lattice. In this whisper of weather, forests find rhythm. A quiet harmony with clouds, temperature, pressure, and rain. And in their own way, they whisper back. Through the shimmer of trembling leaves, through the scent released after rain, petrichor, which is not just pleasant to us, but a chemical message to insects and microbes. The earth is ready. Let us rest here, beneath the dripping boughs. Let the hush of the forest wrap around you like a soft blanket. And listen, can you hear it? The rain, the moss, the trees, they are speaking, still, always. Beneath the rustling canopy, where branches sway gently in the breeze and sunlight dances like liquid gold through the leaves, there exists a hidden world, a memory system of roots, fungi, and chemical whispers. The forest remembers. It holds the imprint of storms, of predators, of seasons past, not in books or words, but in the living language of survival encoded into its very being. This is the secret library of the wild, and the trees are its keepers. Scientists once believed plants were passive, senseless life forms. They stood immobile, voiceless, and oblivious to the world around them. But as our understanding deepened, we began to witness a startling revelation. Plants not only respond to their environments, but also retain those experiences in ways that mirror learning. They do not forget. Take the humble Mimosa pudica, a delicate fern-like plant known for folding its leaves at the slightest touch. In a now famous experiment, researchers dropped the plant repeatedly without harming it. At first, it responded by closing its leaves each time. But soon, something changed. After several repetitions, it stopped reacting. It had learned that the drop posed no threat. Even more remarkably, when tested again weeks later, the plant still remembered this experience, refusing to close its leaves unnecessarily. This was not mere instinct, it was memory. Now shift your gaze to the forest, to the tall beech and fir, to the ancient oak. Trees, too, exhibit signs of memory. When a tree is attacked by a pest, it responds by producing defensive chemicals. But even more fascinating, its response is faster and stronger the next time it faces the same invader. Through a combination of hormonal shifts, electrical signaling, and possibly even changes at the epigenetic level, trees remember threats. And this memory is not locked within the individual alone. It can be passed through root networks and chemical signals to neighboring trees.
Imagine a young sapling growing under the protective shadow of its parent. As it stretches upward toward the light, it's also tuned into the chemical language of the community. If nearby trees have suffered from drought, the sapling may begin to close its stomata earlier, conserving water long before the soil dries. This is anticipatory memory, a kind of forewarning passed on by those who've already endured. Then there is the memory of fire. In certain ecosystems, like pine forests or eucalyptus groves, fire is not just a destructive force, it's a cycle, a rhythm the forest learns to expect. Some trees bear seeds that only open in intense heat, triggered by the flames of wildfires.
Others grow thick bark or drop flammable leaves to encourage surface fires that clear competition but spare their own trunks. Over generations, these adaptations become encoded not only in DNA, but also in the learned responses of each growing season, reinforced by shared chemical knowledge in the soil and air. But perhaps the most poignant form of memory lies in the social bonds of the forest. When a mother tree begins to decline, it often sends a final gift to the network, diverting nutrients to its kin or transferring stored carbon to the youngest and most vulnerable. These actions suggest a kind of legacy, a handing down of not only resources, but experience. The forest, like any family, remembers who gave, who suffered, who bloomed. In our human minds, memory is tied to story, narratives etched into neural pathways. In the forest, memory is rooted in chemical cascades, electrical pulses, and silent interactions beneath the soil. Yet the outcome is not so different. Trees adapt, anticipate, and even mourn. They carry within them the weight of what came before. Each scar on a trunk, each twist of a branch, each subtle shift in leaf chemistry. These are pages in the great forest memory. Imagine for a moment we walk beneath the trees. We are not only stepping through space, but through time. The ground remembers the footsteps of deer long gone. The air holds the scent of flowers from springs past. The leaves tremble with knowledge passed from root to root in voices we cannot hear. This is the secret life of plants, not just alive, but aware, adaptive, and anchored in memory. A living history whispered through the leaves. While animals remember through neurons, plants record through layers. Each tree ring is a page in a diary etched in wood, a memory of drought or abundance, of war or silence. These silent circles store decades, even centuries, of Earth's moods and movements. Tree rings widen in wet years, narrow in droughts. Some carry chemical traces of volcanic ash, forest fires, or even radioactive fallout. Trees do not forget. In this way, forests are living archives, whispering old stories through the widths of their trunks. Scientists in dendrochronology, the study of tree rings, have decoded tales of ancient climate change, collapsed civilizations, and lost ecosystems. Forests in Sweden have trees that remember the Little Ice Age. Pines in Arizona hold memories of ancient droughts that shaped the fate of entire indigenous communities. Even more mysteriously, certain tree species seem to prepare for hardships years before they arrive, reducing seed production before a known drought. It's as if the forest reads subtle cues from the soil, the stars, and each other, anticipating what's to come. In this way, memory is not a human trait alone. Trees remember, not with brains, but with growth, not with images, but with the shape of survival. So we look at the trees once more, not as passive ornaments of nature, but as living, whispering beings, aware, adaptive, and ancient in their wisdom. They respond to one another. They change their chemistry in times of danger. They collaborate across species boundaries. They store memories in rings and roots. They sing with the seasons. And as we walk through forests now, with the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the filtered sunlight dancing in golden flickers across moss-covered trunks, perhaps we begin to listen differently. A shift occurs not only in understanding, but in presence. The forest is no longer a background, it becomes a voice. The whisper of a birch to a pine, the scent signal from a beech to a maple, the vast pulse of mycorrhizal networks guiding nutrients and messages underground, like quiet circuitry. What once seemed still is now a symphony. And we, if we learn to listen carefully, might hum along. The future of forest intelligence doesn't lie in merely studying it, but in honoring it. It lies in quieting ourselves enough to truly hear what the forest has been saying all along. Not in words, but in rhythms. Not in declarations, but in communion. Perhaps the next great discoveries won't come from new instruments or satellites, but from sitting still beside an old tree, waiting, listening, breathing in sync with the green world around us, recognizing that wisdom is not only stored in books, but in bark, not just in neurons, but in needles. And that brings us gently now, like twilight at the edge of a glade, toward our final section. Welcome once more, dear listener. Take a breath. Let it be soft. Let it mirror the breath of the trees. As we near the close of this long, gentle journey, we arrive at perhaps the most intimate truth of all, that we are not separate from this story. The forests we've explored, the silent communications, the memories encoded in sap and soil, they live within us too. For our bodies remember trees. Our lungs are forests inverted, branches turned inward, pulling oxygen that leaves once exhaled. Our minds crave what forests offer: rhythm, slowness, rootedness. Even in the deepest cities, something within us quiets in the presence of a tree. Something exclaims softly, "Yes, here I remember." This isn't metaphor, it's biological memory. We evolved in forests. Our nervous systems respond to tree canopy the way a child responds to a parent's embrace. Blood pressure lowers, cortisol fades, thought slows, attention softens. Scientists call it forest bathing, but ancient cultures needed no such term. They simply called it life. To reconnect with the green mind, the forest within, is not about escaping modern life, but about remembering the foundation upon which that life rests. It's a return, not to something lost, but to something ignored. The wild, rooted intelligence that still lives in our bones, waiting. We've now learned how trees speak, but the final question is, do we speak back? Not in words, but in reciprocity, by planting instead of paving, by protecting instead of profiting, by pausing, walking slower, sitting beside roots, and offering our attention as the richest gift we can give. Because when we love forests, truly and actively, they grow stronger. And when they grow stronger, so do we. Let this be our lullaby, whispered not in lyrics, but in leaves. May you dream tonight of green light filtering through high branches. May your breath match the pulse of roots. May your mind sway with the wind, gentle and curious. And may you never again walk through a forest without feeling, deep in your chest, that something is watching you, kindly, waiting for you, welcoming you home. The trees are listening. And now, you are too.